Let's have a conversation. Yeah. Let's have a conversation. Oh, yeah. Look. Yeah. Hey. Let's have a conversation. Woo. Pick up some gems, life is all you make. Go. We keep it real, we don't talk to fake. Tell them hottest talk show on the net, coming for all the mates. Let's have a conversation. Woo. Pick up some gems, life is all you make. Go. We keep it real, we don't talk to fake. Tell them hottest talk show on the net, coming for all the mates. Let's have a conversation. Yeah. Let's have a conversation.
Hello, everyone. This is Michelle Biggs, CEO of My Best Everyday Coaching and Consulting, and the host of Real Conversations with Michelle. And I am so excited about this episode of Real Conversations because I get to talk to some young professionals about their experience in the workplace and how they have navigated in the workplace. Because we do know that it can be very intimidating to enter into an employer situation for the first time and really not understand what to do and how to maneuver. So who better to hear it from around this topic about early career navigating the workplace than those who have experienced it within the last 10 years themselves. And I know these individuals, some of them personally, so I know their stories and some of the things that they've done to advance their career, issues and concerns that they've dealt with, as well as we know COVID has been a big impact on a lot of people. So we'll talk about that as well, because I do know as an HR professional for 36 years, maneuvering around just entering back into this work world has been a challenge for a lot of people, no matter how old you are. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But for those of you who are new to my platform, I am a senior HR professional getting ready to retire. I have a coaching business. I am a master certified life coach, as well as an associate certified coach through the International Coaching Federation. For the last, I would say 10 years, have been a strategic HR business partner. So handling everything from talent management, career development, workplace coaching, diversity and inclusion. So I handle a lot of different things, worked in employee relations, and I also was a recruiter as well with an investment bank. And now I'm with the global pharmaceutical company, as I mentioned, getting ready to retire. So without further ado, I'm going to start introducing each of my guests. But I will say this, let me just caveat this. The information here, this is an educational program, and my mantra for this program is learning and growing together. So it's an opportunity for us to learn from each other. But because it's educational, I also want to make sure you are doing your own homework, right? So there's going to be a lot of information that's going to be provided, and you have to do what's best for you. So make sure you're doing your own research and consulting with the right people to make sure that any information that you hear that feels like something that you want to apply in your own situation, talk to some people just to make sure it does fit your space and your need. Okay. So that being said, let me start to introduce my guest. First up, Miss Micah. Hello, Miss Micah. Take yourself off mute.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Micah, can you start by just telling us how long you've been working in corporate America and what was your first job out of college?
Yeah.
And what are you doing now? Yeah.
So like Michelle said, my name is Micah Adams. I am currently an HR manager for a manufacturing company. I've been in HR for about eight or 9 years or so. And I started as an HR clerk at the Sheraton Hotel in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Micah. Next up, Dylan.
Hey, how are you?
Good, Dylan. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. So tell everybody how long you've been working in corporate America and what was your first job out of college?
Yeah, so corporate America, I think this is year 8 that I'm currently on.
Mm-hmm.
My first job out of college was in experiential marketing. So we worked with a client on the agency side to travel across the country and set up different experiences for their clients to come and enjoy.
Yeah. And what are you doing now? Because I know Micah, you're still in HR, but higher level job than you started out with, right? Dylan, what are you doing now?
Yeah, so now I'm working as a content specialist in the automotive industry. So in some ways, a little bit of a full circle moment, considering I started out in automotive, and that's kind of where I am now.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Miss McCary. Hey, McCary, take yourself off mute.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
So how long have you been working in corporate America? And talk about your first job out of college and what you're doing now.
Sure. So I've been in corporate America, I would say, since 2018. So not too long. And I'm sorry. My first job out of college, I actually was working for Walt Disney World. So I left the day after I graduated college, less than 24 hours, got on a flight, and then I worked in guest services for Disney for a few years. So that was my first job.
Okay. And then what you're doing now?
Yes. Now I am doing regional event sales for a golf simulator, sports entertainment.
Thank you. Next up, I have Mr. Brenton Logan. Hey, Brenton.
Hey, how's it going, Michelle?
Good. So talk about your first job out of college and what you're doing now.
Cool. My first job out of college was in a sales rotation program at Lenovo in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I sold to SMB, which is small medium businesses, and then I sold in the education sector to universities, big universities such as like Duke, UNC, Virginia Tech, pretty much on the eastern side of the country. But now I have navigated over more into the HR space where I am in talent acquisition, where I am a senior diversity and inclusion recruiter, particularly recruiting at HBCUs and HSI for Capital One. So I've been incorporated about 7.5 years now.
Yeah,
you've been there. Different things.
Yeah, you've been there long enough to talk about some things, to talk about your experience.
We'll see.
Yeah. Next up, I have Miss Camila. Hey, Camila.
Hey.
Right. Talk about your first job out of college and what you're doing now.
Well, I've been doing this for about 3.5 years. It'll be 4 in June. My first job out of college, I was a junior strategist at BBDO. It's a big agency here in the city. And I was working on brands like Shea Moisture and Sandy Hook Promise, stuff like that. And now I'm a senior strategist at Ogilvy on IBM.
Yeah. And let me just say this. They are talking from their own experiences. They're not representatives of their companies. I want to make sure everybody understands that piece, right? So last up is Miss Jasmine Christie. And Jasmine, I don't see your okay, there you go. I'm like, come on now. Hey, niece. take your microphone off. Yeah.
Okay. Hey,
cool.
guys. So yes, I am Michelle's niece. My name is Jasmine Christie. I've been in corporate America for about 11 years, which sounds crazy coming out of my mouth. And I've been in the fashion industry for about 8 years and the tech industry for about 3 years. So I'm a career changer. My first position out of college was a production coordinator in the manufacturing space. And then right now I am in the tech industry and I'm a UX researcher.
Thank you, Miss Jasmine. And Camille, I don't think I asked you how long you've been in corporate America. So if you can answer that question for me.
Oh, I mentioned it, 3.5.
Did you? Okay, cool. And I know the word corporate America, some and me and these young professionals talked about that. It's like, well, I'm in manufacturing. That's not really corporate for me. First time out of college in a not-for-profit type of environment is what I really wanted to make sure I captured here. Because anytime you're working in a big environment, it can be very intimidating. And you guys all did just that. So let's get into the questions that I have for you guys. So was it clear after you graduated what you wanted to do from a career perspective? And if not, how did you gain that clarity? So who wants to answer that question first? I won't call on anyone specifically. I want to answer that question first.
I'll go first.
Go ahead, Makari.
I personally was unaware of what I wanted to do out of college. I kind of took the first thing that popped up, was returning back to Orlando. So straight out of college, I kind of was a little bit lost, which I feel like is a lot of people, at least in my current generation. You don't really know which way to take your degree. So I kind of went with the first available option to just kind of grow myself at that point. Honestly, I don't really know if I ever received such clarity as what position I'd like to go into. I think with how the world is moving now, a lot of us are just rolling with the punches. So I don't think I ever kind of got clarity. I think at this point, I'm just kind of going with what makes sense with my background and my degree. So
Okay, cool. Thank you, Ms. Kari. Next up, Dylan, how about you?
Yeah, I'm one of those people as well. I thought I knew what I wanted to do going into college. I was 100% certain that I was going to be a pharmacist, and it turned out that I didn't like science as much as I thought. So that was short-lived for me. And the same could be said about my career as well. And part of it for me has just been exploring and getting closer to what I do want to do by learning the things I don't want to do. So taking a chance on a job and saying, this is close enough and sounds interesting to me right now, and learning more about the work that I'm doing in that role, and then looking around and seeing what else is out there, what else is available. I mean, are some of those things more interesting or closer aligned to what it is I want to do? And every time I take on a new opportunity, I'm trying to get closer to that thing that I feel like this is exactly the thing I want to do.
Yeah, thank you. And there's a reason I asked this question. I want people to hear how different it is, and then from when you guys graduated to what you're doing now. Because I think a lot of young people growing up, and even myself, right, start off thinking one thing, and then once you get exposure, you find yourself doing different things, and that's a good thing. But sometimes people get so uptight while you're in college about, I gotta find a major, I gotta declare, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. So I just love what I'm hearing. So Camila, how about you?
Sure. So when I first graduated, I thought I was going to be a copywriter because I love writing, love words, love all that. So that's what I got an internship in. And then we had a project where we had to work with other interns within the agency. And I found the strategy interns, and I was like, I like what they got going on. I think I'm going to make that move. But I didn't know. I thought copywriting was going to be it. But the experience of that project really opened it up for me.
Good. Camila, just adjust your camera a little bit because you're starting to kind of doing from your chin up. So just adjust it just a little bit. Thank you. Who didn't speak? Micah.
Yeah. So similar to Dylan, when I started college, I was majoring in biology, and I took that first Bio 101, and I was like, no, this is not for me. And I think maybe by my junior year is when I started to say, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to pick a major. So I took a more, I guess, practical approach of like, what can I get into that fits my strengths? I don't really like math. I like money. I like people, but I'm not very, creative as far as like artsy and music and things like that. So HR just kind of was a good fit. I felt like it was also, an industry that has a wide range. So I didn't know specifically what I wanted to do, but I know that HR could get me into compensation, recruiting, employee relations. So I had, a wide range of things to choose from. And I ended up getting an internship my senior year. And from there, I was like, yeah, I like this. It just kind of fit.
I'm so proud of you because you followed in my path. So, I was excited when I learned what you were doing. Nisi, Jasmine, did you talk? Yes, ma'am.
I did not speak yet
Okay.
for this question. So was it clear what I wanted to do after I graduated? So I was actually I felt like I was clear, at least when I graduated. It was up until I started working in the industry about maybe 2 years in, so not that far in, that I started to realize that there were other things that I was interested in. And to backtrack just a little bit, I think in in college, I minored in psychology, and I believe that that really did spark a lot of interest for like just figuring things out, getting into the mindset of people, being a problem solver. And fast forward, I'm able to, utilize a lot of that. So my answer is yes. I felt like I was sure, but I think along the way I started learning and getting exposure to just different industries out there, different roles, and I just started exploring from there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Brenton, I don't think you answered this question yet, right?
Nope, I haven't.
Okay.
So leaving college, well, I think around my sophomore year, I thought I wanted to go to law school. And then I did like a law school internship, and I was like, nah, this is definitely not for me. But then I kind of like got into the political world, and I knew that I could, like Michael said, I kind of just tried to focus on my strengths. Like I knew that I can influence. I knew that I could sell pretty much anything to anybody. So I went in that direction of sales. I went into sales, and then just kind of just let the wind take me from there, from sales to business operation at AWS, and now into recruiting, where I'm like kind of like selling again, just in another way. So it's been kind of cool to just kind of just let life happen, and that's what has happened for me, and I've just been fortunate, to be honest. So that's how my life has been.
Are any of you surprised that you're doing what you're doing now? If you look back at from the beginning, are you surprised where you are now?
I would say I am. Going to college, my degree was hospitality and food service. And I guess I'm still in the general area, but primarily I'm doing sales, but it's in sports and entertainment. So I am still in that event background. But if you told me, if I looked back like when I was in college and it's like, you're going to be doing sales, I would have never. I never thought I had that background for it at all. And then it just kind of, I've been doing it for a while now. So now it's, I would say it doesn't get easier, but I would say the more skills you pick up, the easier it comes for you to sell things. So
yeah, and you are rocking it. You can be humble, but you are doing the doggone thing in the world. I know that. So anybody else surprised if you think back where you started and look at what you're doing now? Are you surprised about what you're doing right now?
I'd say I'm surprised. Like, I said I had started as an HR clerk. My internship was an unpaid internship at a staffing agency. It was nuts. It was like, in the HR world, maybe bottom of the totem pole type of thing. But just to see, like, when you're starting so young, you just don't realize what lies ahead and how much opportunity there is and how far you can go. So it's surprising to me that, I started with this internship and now I've managed multiple sites. I've been relocated a few times. It's really surprising.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Just surprised.
I would say, yeah. I think everyone in careers has a little suspense to it because you really don't know, right? Like I tell people every day when they join any org, it's like all you can control is total output, right? You can't control promotion. You can't control like if you're well liked, if you receive, if that company like Black people, if they don't like Black people. None of that you can really control, right? All you can control is showing up and doing what you feel like is your best and hoping that what you find your best, someone else agrees that is your best or what they want. And so from there, the trajectory just become endless. So yeah, I'll say I'm definitely surprised. I've worked in 3 different industries in the last 7 years. So I'm super surprised. And I think I'll switch again, like post MBA. So yeah, I think I'll be surprised. Like in 2 years, if we had this conversation, it'll be a whole nother Brenton.
What is, anybody else have anything you want to add that's different to what anybody said? Yeah,
sure.
Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and add. So I am not surprised. And I say that because although a lot of people would be like, oh, you changed careers, I think that the journey was really just finding a role that fit all the things that I really enjoyed. And I felt like something was missing in the past. So I was always exploring. I'll get to like the networking part when we get there, but it was a lot of that was involved. So no, I'm not surprised. I feel like if I would have discovered this role earlier, that would have been great. But everything also happens for a reason. So the experience that I had definitely helped me out, helped pave the way.
Yeah. And speaking of that, Jasmine, let's talk a little bit about that. I told y'all, because y'all, when I do rehearsals and stuff like that, I don't ask them to give me their answers. I really want this to be authentic. So here's a question that's coming up, y'all, that I know I didn't send to you. But do you feel like the things that you've done help prepare you for where you are right now? Who wants to answer that question?
I can answer.
Go ahead, Camila.
I do think the things that I've done have prepared me for for this space in my career right now. I think even though I'm still really early, when I came into the advertising industry, I came in pretty hot. Like, it was just working on a lot of different campaigns and a lot of different brands at the same time, and just trying to juggle and navigate that, and just understand more about strategy and more about the industry in general. So now that I'm just focused on less brands and it's more work, but still under the same umbrella, I think it's easier to navigate. Like, oh, I'm familiar with like 1,000,005 things going around at the same time, and just trying to pace myself, but still get everything done.
Cool. Anybody else? Prepared?
Yeah, I'll go.
Go ahead, Mike. Makari.
I feel like my past roles did somewhat prepare me for where I'm at now. I think because I've been in like the food and beverage guest service industry since my first job when I was 13, I think all of that led me to have better people skills when it comes to sales. And I think that's what helped me in the long run, because once you learn that guest service, that guest recovery, like taking care of someone part of sales, I think it really kind of excels you in your career, at least in that perspective. And I could say it definitely helped. And I've, like I said, been in guest care, guest relations roles before. So I think it helps in the sales role because you can empathize with the client, fit their needs, and close a sale kind of thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone have anything else they want to add to that in terms of your experience?
Yeah, I'd add to that.
Go ahead, Dylan.
I think the experiences that I've had have been beneficial to where I am now, but not for the work experience itself. It's been more about how to work with the team, how to advocate for yourself, how to get the things that you need out of a job, out of networking, out of relationships. Those are the kind of things that have helped me. So the work experience itself may not be directly connected and kind of building up one over the other, but the interpersonal skills and the intangibles, those have been the things that have definitely helped me to be where I am now.
Yeah, and what I like about what you all are saying, and the reason I asked that question is a lot of times we can step into a space, especially early on in our career, and like, why the heck am I doing this? Like, why am I doing, like, what am I going to get out of this? And what you guys have shared is that there were things that you got out of that you were able to now leverage where you are. So how do you make sure that you are, and I use the word grow where you're planted, like grow where you're planted, right? And learn the things that you need to learn so that you can incorporate it going forward into other experiences that you may encounter. So I appreciate your responses to that. So let's talk a little bit about stepping into your first job out of college and in a corporate environment. So what is the one thing you wish someone had told you before joining a corporate environment?
I'm just going to throw out there real quick
Go
to
ahead,
negotiate.
Micah.
To negotiate, yes.
Mhm.
So I will say, when I left the Sheraton and I got my first position as like a service center representative at XPO, they offered me a role and I was like, yes. Oh my God, yes. I was just immediately so happy. And I just said yes, which, is fine. Of course, that excitement is good. But at the same time, I think that over eagerness probably, I lost out on some money or whatnot. But I would just say negotiating and learning how to negotiate is also something that takes some practice. But yeah, there's plenty of money to be made in the corporate world. Don't ever let them fool you.
Go ahead, Brenton. What you want to say, Brenton?
I'll have to second with that with Micah. The next thing I'll say is like really understand who makes like the decisions. I think that like that's kind of like hard to like navigate when you're coming in because it's just so many people. But like understand like who makes the needle move, and then make sure they know you and not you just knowing them. Because a lot of times you hear people be like, "Yeah, I work with them," and then you ask that person like, "Oh, did you work with this person?" They be like, "I don't really know them." So like make sure that person knows you, and that's really how you move the needle. Like get to know the stakeholders and because and stakeholders don't always mean like they have to be a VP. They can just have an influence. Like that person, they can. I've had people on my team or people like managers, who literally they don't say much, but when they do talk, like whatever they say happens. And I kind of like learned that at Amazon. Like it would be one guy, he wouldn't say anything, but when he talked, you can guarantee that it was gonna happen because he said nothing. But he was like heavy. He was a Harvard grad.
Heavy influencer.
He was just heavy influence. So whenever he talked, you can bet your money that it'll happen. So just really making sure that people who have influence like know you, and know what you're capable of. I would say I wish people would have told me that.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about the networking because that is a great point, Brenton. Anyone else?
The only thing I would say looking back, I didn't have like a really big corporate job until I left Orlando, but I would say the first thing I would tell myself is don't take the first job that is thrown your way because you're so hesitant about not being employed. And especially like the times that we all graduated and like moving forward now, we're just trying to make sure that we make enough money to pay our bills to be sufficient. And I feel like out of college, it's not as big as a concern. So you're just going to take the first thing. So I would say don't take the first thing and to fake that confidence until you get there, because I think we're also unsure in our teenage years when you come out of college. And I feel like you have to fake confidence. Same thing. You have to learn how to network. You have to just, as long as you go into a room and you can present yourself well and know how to sell yourself, I feel like that is so important when you're young and starting your career.
And talk about how did you get to the point where you felt comfortable about how you present yourself, Makari? And anyone else who wants to join in on that conversation too. Go ahead, Makari.
I didn't get comfortable until my late 20s. So I wish I had answered that when I was young. I think when you're out of college, you have a lot of confidence, honestly, because you're 18, 19 at the same time, and nothing, people can tell you something and you're like, whatever, I can do it.
Especially some generations, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, not mine. But I think the older you get, and maybe when you work with people that are a little bit older than you, they're able to kind of, when you have really good mentors at 18, 19, 20, it's so important. And I never had that. So I had to use, honestly, it was you and my mom was the only two kind of people I went back and forth with on things. But besides that, if you don't have a mentor, I think you really just have to use your resources at that point from your job, your friends, and get guidance that way.
Who else wants to answer that question?
I can add. I think.
Go ahead, Camila.
I think one thing that helped, I don't know if I'm like fully comfortable. I'm getting there. I'm getting more comfortable as time goes on. But one thing that's helping me get to that comfort is the reminder, like, yes, I need to be here, but like my job also needs me, and just that mental reminder when I'm feeling like, oh, like this is a little too much. I don't know if this is the right thing. Just to like, they also need me. So they need my voice and they need my opinion on things. So that's just a good mental reminder for me when I'm feeling like it's a little much. It's a little much right now.
So the one thing you wish someone had told you before joining. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So I'll add something kind of alongside what Camilla said. I would say to do your research on the company and see if you like the culture. I feel like that's very big, especially if you plan to invest years or whatever have you with the company. Also, just the people who you work with, you're going to be with them more than you're with your family, as we know. So I feel like it's always good, even if you reach out to someone that maybe they know someone within the company that can just give you their opinion. Of course, you're not going to take it, too far, but you'll use your instincts and figure out what the best decision is for you, whatever feels right.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have anything you want to add to that? Okay, so let's talk about. Actually, I have a question coming out of the audience. She said, "I'd love to know how these young professionals advocate for themselves in the corporate world." Who wants to take that on?
Okay, I'll go.
I have it. Yeah, go ahead, Bakari.
Same thing we talked about earlier, where it's really faking that confidence and honestly, in my age at this point, I feel like I have developed my like how I form words and thoughts, if that makes sense. So when I go to like approach someone to try to advocate for myself or speak up for myself, I normally, like I said before, I'll reach out to my mom or Michelle or someone that I know for advice. And I'm pretty good where if I write up what I want to say and I kind of like have a time to sit down and think about how I should express myself professionally. Because I don't know if you guys are the same, but if I go in to have a serious conversation and I don't have like a list or something to refer to, I'm going to be all over the place. I have ADHD, so I can't focus on something unless it's written down. But I think one thing that's super important is to be familiar with your management and know the best way to approach them, because I feel like everyone is so different. And so someone might be better in a one-on-one. Some you might have to get like HR in the room and have a conversation with 3 people. It's like, I feel like it's on a such a case-by-case basis. But I think for me, it's knowing who's above me that I have to have the conversation with, and like showing that confidence that what you say, you can back up what you say. Yeah. I feel like I'm all over the place, but yeah.
No, good. Anyone else? And Brenton, you're being in the HR space, especially as a recruiter. I can imagine you're dealing with a lot of young, early career professionals entering the workplace, and they may look at you because you're the first person that they've met, right? Sometimes. Do you come across this with what you do?
Yeah, I do. I think the main thing, it kind of goes back to like that confidence piece, and kind of like owning what you can, right? And so, I think one of the biggest things in our process in general, just to think about work, is we case interview to get in, right? Everybody case, So I case to get in, students case to get in. That's just what we do at my job. And so, I tell people too, also, like, there's different components of every process, and own like what you're good at, right? That's how I advocate for myself, right? So if I'm good at creating strategy for early talent, and I'm not good at maybe like drawing a graph or something like that, like I don't try to spend my time doing that, right? So I advocate in the ways that in which it favors me. I think one of the biggest things I learned at Amazon, when you like your first day, on day 1, you get a Strength Finders test, and then you get a book called Strength Finders, and the book kind of talks about if you're left-handed, not trying to write with your right hand while at Amazon, and if you're right-handed, not trying to use your left hand, and vice versa. So like, I think I really homed in on that. Now I'll take that everywhere I go in my career and just like focus on what you're good at. I think too many times people come in and be like, I'm gonna try to just be a subject matter expert. It's like, bro, you really don't have to do that. You have a UX designer here, you got somebody in HR, you got someone who's worked at Disney. Like, you got all these people. All you have to do is just leverage them, and then you just be good at what you're good at, and it'll just come together. So that's how I personally I think about advocating for myself. And then the mentor piece, like finding those mentors within the organization, right? Like making sure they know you, but like finding those mentors within the organization, and like find them quick. Like, don't take a long time. You can always be like, hey, we don't really click, I'm gonna go another route. But like, find those mentors early, so you can kind of find out like, hey, how does this really work? I want to know the real deal. Like that, because that let me know like how long am I really gonna be here? How long am I gonna circle this block? So that's what has worked for me in terms of like advocating for myself.
Yeah, the mentors is a huge piece, y'all. And you can find mentors for a lot of different things, but having a mentor who is in the room. So I know, Brenton, you talk about know who the influencers are. Yeah, having those influencers as your mentor is key, right? And I do a whole session on mentoring around, because it's not easy for everybody, especially if you're to approach a mentoring relationship. So if anyone out there wants to learn about that, definitely hit me up and I will talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, being able to find a mentor who can advocate for you. It's about someone who can be in a room where you're not and be able to talk about you, and the things that you've done. And how you build that is really, again, you're sitting, you're talking, you're telling them what you're doing, you're talking about things, you're getting their advice on things. That's how they get to know you and can be a voice when you're not in a space to be your own voice. So thank you for that. Anybody else?
I would add one thing on the end, really kind of going off of what you just said. It's taking the time to not assume that they know what it is that you're doing. So I think sometimes I have a bad habit of taking that for granted, that I believe that the person I report to on a weekly basis, daily basis, knows all of the things that I've been doing and all the accomplishments that I have. And more than likely, that's not the case. So, like you said, it's also a matter of giving them the necessary information that's needed. So whenever they do go and are presenting your case on your behalf, that they have the best picture, and the best things to say about you because you handed that information to them. And on the other side of that is, realistically, what's the worst that can happen? You might ask for $50,000 more and they say no, okay, but then maybe they still give you 30 anyway. So, I think those things kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, and it's something. It took me one time in my career, and it just took me one time. Because to your point, Dylan, a lot of times what we do, and I know this to be true a lot for particularly diverse individuals. You grow up thinking, they're going to see my worth. I just have to put my head down. Let me just keep doing what I'm doing. Someone will see my worth. It took one time for a leader who I reported to tell someone something about me that was not true in terms of what they thought I wanted from a career perspective. And I remember being in a conversation with that person's boss, and he was like, "Oh yeah, Michelle, I heard you. You really." I was like, "Where'd you hear that from?" From that point on, I'm like, to your point, Dylan, whenever I would meet someone, I would make sure that they knew what I was doing and what I aspired to do in the organization, right? No one else can speak better for you than you. So leverage every opportunity when you're talking to people in your workplace. Use every opportunity to be able to sell yourself, right? Now, you don't want to be a salesperson, right? You don't want to be over zealous. But yeah, brag about what you do, what you accomplish, and things that you've done, for sure, for sure. Okay. Anybody else wants to add to that? What did you wish what you wish someone told you? And if not, I'll go to my next question. Okay. How are you managing your career? Speaking of which, how are you doing that? How have you done it? Who wants to go first?
I could go first.
Bad, Makari.
How am I managing my career? I'm sorry, ask the question one more time.
Yeah, just how are you managing your career?
And
what has been the most challenging thing about managing your career? So I'll put those two together.
So I just switched companies in February. I'm also a bit of a, I wouldn't say career jumper, but I definitely change companies, not fairly often, but often enough. I think me managing my career, like what I'm more focused on is what makes the most sense and makes the most money. And I try to make sure I always, I'm really good with work and life balance, where like I'm pretty much off the grid when it's 5 p.m., 6 p.m., whatever, like I'm done. Don't contact me or anything of that sort. And even being in sales, I think it's hard to set that boundary with people because, I used to get calls at 10, 11 p.m. at night. And I work in sales. Like there's nothing that is that important that I need to be contacted after 5 or 6. Nobody's going to die. I'm not in a healthcare position. It's not life or death. It's food and it's alcohol. There's nothing that I need to be contacted. So I feel like for me, how I manage it has been setting expectations with clients and also my management team. I think when you set expectations and set boundaries from the jump, like from when you first started a position, they're going to know how to treat you, when to talk to you, when is appropriate, when it's not appropriate. Because once I'm off the clock, like I don't want anyone from work reaching out to me. Like that's my time. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, well, you're getting into the conversation about boundaries, but so how about in terms of what you want to do next, and just thinking about how you have, because you have changed different roles and things like that. How did you manage that? How did you approach that from a career perspective?
So I think the thing for me is when I feel like I know when I'm starting to be unhappy or question my job, when you get like an uneasy feeling, and I'm sure the women get it as well, but it's like when your intuition is starting to tell you that something is off, something doesn't feel right, like you feel that you don't have a way to progress in the company if you want to progress. I mean, some people are good with where they are, which is totally fine. But I just felt like where I was at was kind of a standstill and was getting really stagnant. And I was doing the same thing every day. There was no variety. It just wasn't exciting in the jobs that I was doing in the past. So I think for me, when I start getting bored and I start getting stagnant, and me going to work is like a more of a chore, that's normally when I'm kind of like, okay, it's time to start looking. And we know the job market has been, insane since COVID. So I think I also have to look at the fact of it's not easy to up and leave jobs like it was before COVID. I feel like before we could honestly apply to multiple jobs and hear something. But now you're applying to hundreds of jobs and you'll maybe hear back from 1 or 2 of them. So I feel like the thing for me is I will change a job when I just feel like there's no room for growth and I just don't see any enjoyment of even getting up or getting dressed or anything to go to work, because most of our time is spent at work. So you have to at least be somewhat, happy. And obviously I don't have a dream of working for the rest of my life, but I feel like
because you just want to travel. I know this. Yeah. Travel since she was born. You just want to be a travel. You, Jasmine, and Camila can get together. Micah. Yeah, and Micah. Yeah, y'all can get together and start a travel club, because you guys are traveling more than me. And I'm like, how they doing that? How I'm trying to figure out. I want to be like y'all when I grow up. So manage your career. Who else has feedback around that? How have you managed your career?
I'll go.
Okay. Jasmine and then Micah.
Okay. So how do I manage my career? So I would say that I think one of the first steps, at least for myself, would just to look back at my growth. And it doesn't have to be like in a year span. It can be, I don't know, in a couple months, and see what areas I can improve on, right? And also acknowledge what areas that I'm doing well on. I also do, not always formally, what is it called? You conducted some of those sessions where you do the board, not a story
vision board.
The vision board, right? So I do vision boards for myself, not always a board. Sometimes I just do vision. I don't know, write it on a scrappy piece of paper, and I take a look at it like every year. And I think that really helps me to just see, okay, have you been doing the things that you need to do to get to the place that you need to get? And I think from there, I just start to get very strategic about that. So whether it's, okay, maybe once a month you reach out to people, maybe you take a class. What are you going to do to actually grow in those areas that you need help in? So for me, something that I'm doing right now, I'm lucky to have a mentor that's within my workplace. So they're able to see my abilities there, like forefronted. And I think that that's very important, to have a mentor that if you can, that's in the workspace and also outside of the workspace. I found that very helpful because sometimes it's good to get outside perspective on a situation or just, I don't know, it doesn't have to be a particular situation. And then someone who actually sees how you perform. So that's been very good for me. And I am not going to answer Terry's question, but I think that is that's a part of it too, is being receptive to feedback, and that has really helped me manage like where I want to be. Because if I'm not able to accept that feedback, then I can't see myself growing and getting to where I need to be. So I'll end it there.
Okay, cool. And yes, I'll mention what Terry's question was in a minute. Anybody else want to add to that? Like, how are you managing your career? And Britton, I know you're going for your MBA next, so I'm sure you're thinking about what's next, or else you wouldn't be going for your MBA.
Yeah, I think how I manage my career is, like you said, like kind of like when I get to a place of I feel like stagnant or like plateau, I just say like, hey, what's next? What has to come next? I think one of the things that someone told me a while ago, and it wasn't my mentor if he's watching, so he didn't tell me this, but someone told me this when I was at my last job at Amazon. I learned a lot there, wouldn't go back. But they always used to say begin with the end in mind. And so like when I start a role, I'm like, like even though I'm having fun, it's cool, like what is next? Something has to come after this. And so that's kind of like me, like I don't do like any vision boards or anything like that. I kind of just keep a mental note. And then like once it's time to like press that pedal, it's like, okay, yeah, I think this is what I want to do. This is how I want to go. And then I start making ways and connections and avenues towards that particular path, and go for it. Like it's no linear. Like I think a lot of people think like success or careers, it's like you got to do this to do that or do this to do that. It's like no linear path. It's just let life happen, control what you can, and give it your all. Like there's no straight way. There's no guarantee that if you take the steps I took, that you'll end up where I am, and vice versa. So everyone has their own journey, and just try to paint that picture as early as you can. Get that in your mind, and just go after the things you want and desire. That's kind of like where I stand and how I self-manage.
And a piece that you said, I think is very important. Everyone's journey is not the same. So even if you are working with a mentor, just because it worked for a mentor doesn't mean it will work for you. You got to, but it is a point where you can gather some information. It's data for you then to decide, okay, is it something, just like when I started the podcast, it's like, chew the meat and spit out a bone. That's how I remember my old pastor used to say, what out of what you're hearing really resonates with you, and what do you feel like you can apply for yourself going forward? Jasmine, I like your answer in terms of just reflecting. And I know you are my niece, but definitely being that person who kind of looks back at what you've done and decide, okay, what do you need to do to get to the next level? So having some points of reference to do some check-ins for yourself, right? Just to see kind of where you are. And it's okay to go with the flow too. Some people, if that works for you, right, you gotta be you. And that's what I'm learning, being in a different generation than you guys. I think a lot of us more seasoned professionals is something that we can learn, because one thing that I do know, and I'm gonna mention this to y'all, I want to see what your reaction is. So rumor has it that y'all just like to jump around a lot. That's what the rumors are out there. What do y'all say about that? Who wants to answer that?
Kind of true in comparison to what the standard used to be. So there used to be the expectation that you get a job, you work for the man 40 years, you retire, you get your pension,
Work for the man, Micah?
That was old school. That was old school. Now, I mean, I think that you don't have to do that. And I think employees and us folks in the workforce, we have needs now too. It's not just about work, work your life away. We want work-life balance. I had this mentor that shared some advice with me, and it was 2 up or out. So you work for 2 years, 2 or so years. After that 2 years, you should be moving up as far as promotion or compensation, or it's time to get out. I mean, especially early in your career, I think that helped me, and I lived by that advice for several years. But now I'm kind of to the point where I'm like, okay, I've got more responsibility and I have needs. I want work-life balance. I want to be able to work from home. I want a certain amount of money. So it's not just about the companies and them getting work out of us, but it's what we want too. And if it doesn't fit, I think this is the generation that will find something else.
You certainly are. I know I'm seeing that, and I'm sure Micah and you, Dylan, being in HR roles, you are seeing that too in the workplace. Am I
Yeah.
correct, Dylan? Are you seeing that as well? Folks moving 2 years.
Brenton.
Brenton, I'm sorry.
Yes, I think people do move on fast, like Michael said, and my philosophy is always this is not a family, this is a sports team. At any time you can get traded. It don't mean I won't have love for that city, Baltimore, Lamar. It won't mean I won't like you forever, love you forever. Thank you for the opportunity. But at the end of the day, this is a business. And I think if nothing over the last 6 to 8 months has proved that, like if you just go on LinkedIn and just scroll, you'll see that companies make decisions that's based on them, right? They don't consider your. I've seen stories from I just got married, got back from my honeymoon, lost my job. I just had a baby, was on maternity leave, lost my job. I just started, lost my job. So it's like there is no, it has literally, there's no situation that I haven't seen come across the screen on LinkedIn in the last, I'll even say 3 months, that people, you know, that companies chose them, right? And it's more, and I think looking at it, I think, in the next year, hopefully that the economy turn around. I'm no economist. I don't know if it will, but if the economy turn around, I think, we'll be on the other side of like now we can kind of pick and choose. And I think our generation would be a little more careful. Like, hey, I saw what they did during the pandemic, so I'm gonna get this money and I'm gonna bounce. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I do think that everybody should do what's best for them, because at the end of the day, you can get traded. You can go to sleep one way and wake up a free agent. And there's nothing wrong with that. And like Young Dolph said, I say get paid. Like by all means, I tell any intern, any full-time student, get paid. Go. If the money is your barrier, go where the money at. Don't come here. If we're gonna pay you less, I literally just lost an offer 2 weeks ago to Apple. I'm like, oh, is Apple paying you $30,000 more to go to New York? I mean, you got to consider New York and DC. I mean, it's two types of living, but $30,000, it's not that big of a difference. You should go to Apple. You should go get the money. So that's just my philosophy, and that's kind of like what I stand by. Like I'll dip for money. So that's just really what it is.
Yeah, and you do have to figure out what's best for you. I remember I talked to an employee today who's leaving my company, and we said, Michelle, it's better opportunity, better work-life balance for me, and I'm always, I will always tell folks, you have to do what's best for you, but you need to understand what it is that you want, right? So how do you make sure that you're doing that?
Michelle, can I add one thing?
Yeah, sure, Micah.
So
Go ahead.
I think that there's like pluses and minuses to both sides of the job hopping kind of mentality or the longevity, staying for many years. So I've had candidates that have stayed in their companies for 15, 20, 30 years. And there can also be a downside to that, where you haven't been in different industries, you haven't experienced your role in different facets. And that can also be kind of a hindrance to your professional career. So I think it's a balance. Like you don't want to move so much that it doesn't look like you're stable, you can't keep a job. You want to be there just enough time to where you can master that role. Maybe you've had some promotions, but I also say you don't want to stay so long that you're kind of missing out on the next best thing or kind of what's out there in the market as well. So it's like a balance. I wouldn't say 50 years, but I wouldn't say 6 months, 2 or so years, I think it's pretty good, 2 to 5. And I even tell some of my managers now, because they're like, they said they're only going to be here for 3 years. I'm like, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
They're going to be here for 3 years. That's pretty good for a company or an organization, for most folks.
Yeah, and from my perspective, it's about being able to show what you're able to do, and for you to be able to demonstrate impact, right? Those are the two big things you want to make sure. Any role that you're in, you want to be able to demonstrate your strategic thinking, your execution, and your impact, because those are the stories that you can tell on your interviews, right? As you're starting to talk to different people about what you're trying to do, those are the stories you want to be able to tell to hiring managers, right? So you definitely want to stay in a role long enough where you can see those three things, right? They can see your strategic thinking, they can see how you execute, and you can then see what your impact is going to be. You have a story to tell in terms of the impact that you've made, right? So to your point, Michael, that could be, what I will tell you is definitely not 6 months, y'all. A year, depending on what you're doing, you may get it in. 2 years is usually, the amount of time that you can see that through. And it's also about gaining breadth of experience, right? So Micah, to your point, you want to be able to do different things. And there's nothing wrong with experiencing different things, but it is about how can you demonstrate what you've learned and the impact that you've made if you are going to hop, right? That's what you want to be able to do. I think the other piece around this is also making sure that everything that you're doing is leading to your next, right? There's some connection of what you're doing that's going to help you in your next, right? So be thoughtful about what you're doing in your role and what you can gain from that experience. And hopefully, if you're aspiring to do something bigger and better, what you're stepping into is going to help you to demonstrate skills that you didn't have before that will help you get to your next. Does that make sense, y'all? Okay, cool. Anybody else have anything you want to add to that at all?
I'll add something. I think when it comes to job hopping as well, I think it's so funny hearing people from like not past generations, but you know what I mean, seasoned professionals.
Yes, ma'am.
Talk about how we are always job hopping, but the thing is like the workforce is so different from when it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. If we're thinking about 1980s, 1990s, 1970s, whatever, you guys made enough money on one job to pay your bills. Now you are lucky if your one job pays all of your bills. Mm-hmm. So now I also feel like job hopping has a lot to do with the fact that we need to make sure that we're making enough money to support ourselves. And now sometimes that's even through multiple streams of income. A lot of times you're not comfortable unless you have 2 streams of income. One stream is like, you're worried that if you lose it, you're done. It's like, then you're back on the workforce, you're unemployed. But I could even take into my own personal effect from when I first got my first job at 13 up until like 26, I was job hopping like every year. Minus when I worked in Orlando. I was job hopping every year because I just never felt satisfied. It wasn't paying my bills. Like I had to work multiple jobs. And even my past position was at a startup company. And with startups, they let people off all the time, especially in tech. And, even when we think about tech was so cyclical with how they lay off people. So it's like a lot of our job hopping also has to do with security. A lot of jobs don't have job security. I've been in the events industry and food and beverage. There's no job security here. So I'm going to go to what is. So I feel like that also attributes to why I've been hopping.
Thank you for those points of view. Did somebody else want to add to that? I thought 2 people were going to say something at the same time. Okay, Camila.
Yeah, it was just really quick. It's funny to hear everyone mentioned like 2 years and then either up or out, because in advertising, it's really one and done, which I think is really interesting. And I didn't realize that when I first came in. My first agency, I was there for 3 years. And I told one of my professors that, and he was like, wow, that's a really long time. I think it's mainly because everything is so portfolio based in a way. You're trying to diversify the kind of brands and clients that you've worked with. So if you're not getting that experience in a year, time to bounce.
Yeah. And it'll depend on industry. And as you said, in an advertising agency, it is based on your account, right? Promotion, like once the promotion is done, you finish with a campaign, you may be on to your next, right? So let's veer a little bit into office politics. How do you guys deal with office? First of all, what is office? How do you define office politics for yourself? And then how do you deal with it? Go ahead, Micah.
So I'd say office politics is like a unsaid social cultural rules or something like that. You have to be aware of it. And Brenton kind of touched on it earlier when he's talking about knowing who are the influencers. You know, if you're trying to get a buy-in or if you're trying to implement something, knowing who you need to talk to. Or even if you're even trying to just move up yourself, knowing who's good to have an ally. I like to keep people in my corner, especially in HR. If I'm, it's kind of just reading the room, being able to read the room in the corporate space. I would call it.
Yeah. And how do you manage that, Micah? How have you managed that?
Well, I think I'm really aware of it just with my role in HR. I'm working with different executives and, all levels of the organization. So just kind of understanding and keeping a pulse on my workforce helps me. I think too, you don't want to get too much in it. You don't want to be, buddy and, the drama that sometimes comes from the politics. I try to stay out of that as much as possible. I try to play the completely unbiased, don't know anything about it type of role. I just think it's something to be very aware of. You just need to understand it. Doesn't mean that you necessarily have to play into it in a negative sense, but sometimes it is useful. You need to know, like Brendan said, about, who can change, who can create change in the organization.
Who else wants to add to that? Jasmine, you going to say something?
I wasn't, but I can.
Okay.
I can say something similar to what Micah said. I mean, they're just things, just unspoken things that they're going on. I was going to say, I don't participate. I don't encourage anybody to. I think that they're good to know. I'm very neutral at work. And that's been working out for me. I just think, yes, it is important to know people that can maybe escalate not a problem, but maybe an idea that you have, or just get the word around someone who just is a good person to know. But I think other than leveraging like the positive aspects of it, I wouldn't pay it much mind.
Yeah. Thank you. Camila, you want to say something?
Yeah, this is actually advice that you gave me. And once you said it, I never forgot it. It's like tattooed on the inside of my brain. But when I hear office politics, I really think just relationship management, because that's really what it feels like. And once you get into it, you're like, oh, this is like high school, but with money and a little more stakes, because that's really what it can feel like. But the advice that you gave me is to always just assume positive intent. And I really just keep that in my mind. And just even when things just feel dicey and just like, oof, this is getting a little much. Like it's very important to just keep that in mind. Like at the end of the day, we're just trying to do our jobs. And I think even to Jasmine's point of staying neutral or just not even getting involved, I think that's also a really important aspect. But if you do need to get involved, like because you have no choice, I think just trying to assume the positive just for your sake of getting your work done is really helpful.
Good advice, Grasshopper. I know some of these people, yo. I'm telling you, when I see them here, it's just amazing. I'm watching them and seeing them as adults. I knew them when they were babies. Oh my God. Anyway, thank you, Camila. Anybody else have anything you want to add to that? Kari, go ahead.
I went through a situation, which was the last time I ever worked in an office, actually. And Michelle and Micah know about it when I experienced a bit of a microaggression, more of like a macroaggression in the workplace. And my boss never set boundaries with us the entire time we were there. She's like, I want to be your bestie. We're going to get drinks. We're going to go out and hang out. And I think all of us being in a new job, and we all got hired together, my director, my coworkers, we all got hired together. So she was like, oh, I want to kiki with you guys all the time. And it ended up blowing up in her face maybe 2 years down the line, because there were no boundaries set. She thought we were best friends. And so, comments got back to me, which I went to HR about. I'm an HR reporter, like through and through, especially when it comes to protecting myself. But I guess with office politics, I thankfully have not been in an office since that job. That was my last office job. I've been remote since, with like going into an office maybe like once every other week. That saved my mental health. I can't even explain it to you. Working in an office, you have to, it's pretty much what everyone said. I think the number one thing is you have to know the people that you need to know and stay away from the people that you have a bad feeling about, you hear stories about, because even though I try not to judge people that I don't know anything of, you still have to be cognizant and aware that, someone can get you fired. Someone can overhear something you said. You could have meant something else. So it's best to try to stay neutral. But I haven't personally caused anything that has got me in trouble, but I have been on the reporter end of things. So I think setting boundaries with people is so important, especially if they're managing you when you go in to kind of be buddy. And that's also an issue why I don't like managing people, because I always want to be everyone's friend. So I stay out of that circuit of trying to manage people. I'm like, I'm going to manage the events. I have no one report to me. Like, that's it. But
yeah, the boundary setting is definitely good. And office politics, look, even when you work remote, you can still deal with politics, right?
yeah,
But I think knowing who to go to if you're finding yourself in the middle of some craziness, and HR is there to help you, right? And I would say that because a lot of times people hear HR is like, oh yeah, I want to go to HR. Depending on your organization, we have strategic HR partners. I know I sit in that space. You have folks like Dylan who would, sometimes I tell people, talk to whoever you feel comfortable with. And a lot of times people might feel comfortable talking to the person who was responsible for bringing them into the organization, can be sort of a mentor and direct them around how to deal in the organization, right, as well. And, Makari, in your situation, it was your manager. But, sometimes you may have to go and speak to, the person above that if you're not comfortable. But leverage your internal process to deal with issues that are going on in your workplace. You definitely want to do that, because that's going to be the first question. If you ever raise any complaint or anything like that, first thing they're going to say is how did you manage it within your organization? Okay, so you want to definitely make sure that you're talking to people who are there to support you and help you kind of figure things out. Anybody else want to add anything to that who hasn't spoken? Dylan, any feedback from your perspective?
Yeah, this is tricky because we are, from my experience, in an era where it's very much about bring your whole self to work and be authentic, and the workspace is a lot more open and accepting of different cultures, different experiences, different walks of life. And I think that's a very slippery slope because it does invite you to want to share all of who you are. And to some of the points made earlier tonight, it is still a job and it is still a business in which they don't necessarily need to know my favorite color of socks for me to do my job well here. So it is a very difficult, tricky thing to balance, but it takes some nuance and some finesse, but it can be done.
Yeah, and how much do you want to share? And you're right. And I over the last 5 years, it is about being you. That's the term we use, be you, right? And how do you do that and feel comfortable? And what is your balance? Even with that, you got to decide what you want, what the boundaries are for you, right? Let's talk a little bit. I do want to talk a little bit about COVID, because, and Makari, your statement made me realize, just let's go into this topic, because during the pandemic, of course, everybody was home. Everybody started feeling very comfortable working from home. And quite frankly, some people were very productive, much more productive working from home. And then you always have those people who, no telling what they were doing, right? How has it been for you in terms of navigating the workplace, post COVID?
Well, I think for me, COVID was crazy. Like, I guess for HR professionals, everybody, honestly.
Yes, they kept us busy, right, Micah?
Yes, we were tracking cases. I thought I was a medical professional throughout COVID. I'm just like, this is like way outside of my scope of support. But I think COVID highlighted some good and some bad things. I really do like that, we have some flexibility now. A lot of people aren't stuck on you have to be butt in seat 8 to 5 in order to get the work done. You could work from home, or maybe you work a little later, or maybe you stay late, you come early and you leave early or whatnot. I like that flexibility that has come. I think that it showed organizations that the work will get done regardless of where the employee is sitting at. So I appreciate that. I definitely think that COVID, it changed the workforce, like you were talking about earlier, Makari. I mean, we went through a period where nobody had jobs, or a lot of people lost their jobs. Then it went crazy. I mean, it's changed the workforce so much. Me personally, I think I've benefited in HR. We used to have to be on site every day. I personally love work from home days. It keeps me sane. I get a bit of peace. I can get work done, get caught up, wash some clothes, or run errands, and you're still getting the work done. So I think it's helped a lot, at least in the HR space.
Okay. For those not in HR, how have you navigated the workplace, and how has post COVID, how's it been for you?
Yeah, I think I started pretty close, like as soon as COVID hit. Like I was maybe 6 months into my first job. So I think COVID kind of spoiled me a little bit in terms of working from home. Like it's very comfortable, but still productive and still getting stuff done. But now that we're going back into the office and going to the office more often, I think it's just a balance. You're just really trying to find that balance between staying productive, but just pacing yourself at the same time. I think there were some bad habits, at least in my industry, that we picked up, just pinging and emailing and texting all hours because we are available. And now we're trying to do that in the office. That does not work. Like we can just talk about it. You don't have to ping me if you can see me, like that doesn't make sense.
Right.
So I think it's just trying to refigure out like where, like Micah was saying, like what can we keep that was great, but like what can we get back to just to stay efficient.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything to add there?
Yeah, sure, I can add. I think it's particularly in my business, so hospitality, events, it was a terrible time. And I think even now we're never going to return back to normal. At least in my industry, it's never going to happen. I think we're going to come pretty close. But I was laid off for half of the time during COVID, and then I was brought back in. But I'm right outside of DC, so the Potomac area was really locked down. Like it was really locked down during that time. And ever since we kind of reopened, people trying to come out and book events, it's a lot slower. So that's why, a lot of people haven't returned back to hospitality, because a lot of times it's not lucrative anymore. With events, we're slowly starting to get back there. But the worst part is when it was still in the middle of COVID, but we saw to sell because the venue was open. So we're sitting here making cold calls to businesses, asking if they want catering, and they're not even in office, they're remote. So it was a lot mentally, because you're pretty much trying to overcome all of the no's and the fact that you're not making any sales and that events aren't going to happen and people aren't comfortable. So there were so many obstacles that went with it that we just took it day by day. But I think now we're starting to slowly get back to being comfortable, and people hosting events and people trying to get a budget, but also offsetting people getting laid off, people losing their jobs, budgets are frozen. Because honestly, right now we're in inflation and it's a recession. So it's like we have two things coming at us right now. So,
and how have you managed personally for yourself?
I feel like for myself, trying to just stay positive is one of my main things, and it's extremely difficult sometimes, especially coming out of COVID. So I feel like that, and trying to organize my day, and I think just knowing that at the end of the day, if I lose a sale now, like a sale's going to come down the road. So it's kind of building up your pipeline now, as they say, for the future. But I feel like for me, it was really just a day at a time. And I think even now, because the fact that we're in inflation and a recession, I think I have to roll with the punches. I don't really have much of a choice in my field, at least.
Yeah.
You have to, because they're building all these companies now in the DC area, which is great, but a lot of them are remote. I think they said, I think it was like 65% of offices in DC are still vacant. Because people haven't returned. So
right.
Still right now.
Yeah. Anybody else in terms of how you manage pre and post COVID as a young professional?
Sure. So I would say I've been working remote since COVID started. I mean, prior to that, I just feel like it was such a long time ago. But but I'll talk about, to me, it definitely overlaps with one, like we were talking about how much you want to share. And I feel like that is important, especially if you work remote, because from my experience, I don't like to share a lot of my personal information in general. So at work, I've learned to share just enough that makes me feel like a person and not a robot. So I think that it's important, like, even if you want to share what you like to do or just checking in on people, I think that that's very important. I think that that's enough. And if you question anything, don't share it. I think that's always a good way to gauge it. But back to like just working remotely, I think it also makes it easier to connect with people, even if they're higher ups. And if you want to be in a certain room, I feel like it's easier to kind of do that connection. One of the reasons could be that it's just a lot more accessible. Maybe they have more, time between their meetings that they could attend, and maybe just visibility to your work. So I feel like it's always good to just make sure that your work speaks for itself, especially when you're remote, because you could get lost behind the screen. So, absolutely. And another good tip that's really good, that's really simple, is culture-wise, like a lot of these companies, they haven't made it mandatory for us to turn on a camera, but I think it's important to turn on your camera. Like, even if you're the first one who does it, I think that I've done it, and other people will start turning on their cameras. And I just think that, there's more engagement. It just, again, like, we have to find that boundary between working remotely and also being people. So I think that's important.
Thank you, Jasmine. Anybody have anything else to share in that space? And if not, we'll move to my last question. But anyone else have anything to share? Brenton, you moved up. You got something to say? You're on mute, Brenton.
I don't.
Okay.
I like COVID. I mean, I think not COVID, but I like what COVID did.
Yeah, I'm gonna say
COVID did. I like what COVID did for the workplace. But I do think there's a component of meeting in person that really helps you get to know who you work with. And you still can remain private. I just think that you just learn someone better, like when you have an in-person interaction. Like, I think if we could like go in person for like 2 or 3 weeks and kind of like get to know that person's inside jokes and body language, then it's different versus if, like, even what I just did, right? Like on Zoom, like if you sat beside me for 2 weeks and I moved up, like, you're probably like, oh, he always just does that when we're moving to the next thing. But since you don't know me, it's like, I don't know what that gesture means, like, did he not like my comment? So there's so many little nuances to me, or components to people's body language of like not really getting to know the full them. Because I, like everyone agreed, you spend so much time with these people. And so my thought is like, you might as well get to know them. Like, how's your wife? How's your husband? Because at this point, like, we talk all day, every day, like Monday through Friday, like we're talking, we're in communication, like, when I'm out of office, you pretty much know a lot about me when I'm traveling, especially if I'm traveling, you just know a lot about my life. So I mean, it just helps me. I think if people went into the office a little bit, but I'm speaking for a person who was also like full-time remote. So
yeah, it's something to be said, and Micah can attest to this. I think all employees are struggling, and it's not just one age group. So I will say that for sure. It's not just one age group. But it's something to be said in terms of out of sight, out of mind. And how do you, Brenton and Jasmine, I think you said that, how do you continue to keep that connection? That's going to be important. How do you figure out, and I'm, speaking to you as young professionals, early career, it's okay to work from home, especially if your company allows you to do that. But you got to think about how do you ensure that you're still front of mind to the people you engage in. And if they're not hearing from you, they're not seeing you, then how are you able to tell your story in terms of what you've been doing, how you've been doing? It's a way to be connected to folks and stay connected and stay relevant, right? You got to have that. And I'm always like in my head, I'm like out of sight, out of mind. If people don't see you, they don't hear from you, it's going to be those people who they see and speak to and stay connected with who are going to be in front of mind when opportunities come up if they're not seeing you. So you need to keep that in mind. Last question, you guys. Leveraging your manager. And you do not have to speak from the perspective of your current manager. I don't want, we will protect y'all from that. But how have you leveraged your man? What's the best way to leverage your manager? What advice would you give?
It's so funny you say that. I had my 10-10 today, which is like our meeting with our managers. It's like 10 minutes of you talking and 10 minutes of your manager talking. But it's really 30 minutes because it's kind of weird. But it's 10 minutes of you talking, 10 minutes of your manager talking. And when I hung up today, when I hung up with my manager, I said, damn, I got a great manager. That's literally what I said. But like your manager is literally your lifeline, in my opinion. Like it's the difference between your job being great and your job being like super mediocre of like, this is not it. I don't care. You can have bad teammates and a good manager, and it makes a world of difference. So I think the way I've leveraged my manager is I think that I can sell better than him, or I think my sales skills are better. So like I try to help him when it's time for my name to be on the table. I try to help him point out like what I'm doing. And what I do best and how I can add value to the team in terms of like when we create strategy. So that's kind of like how I leverage my manager. Also, like any type of recommendation letters I need for B school, I've leveraged my manager. And my manager's only been my manager currently for 1 year. It's coming up 1 year next month, actually.
Okay.
So I've had like a change in manager, but like I think just looking at what their strengths are, like I don't think anyone can sell me better than me. So if it's a choice between me selling myself and them, I'd be like, just let me do it. Can I step in for myself? But just figuring out what they're strong at and like leveraging that skill. My manager is really strong at strategy and creating. Like he has an MBA as well, and just creating like the roadmap to how you want to track hires and all that good stuff, and creating graphs and all that. So it's really good at that. But that's how I personally like leverage my manager for my own like benefit. But I will end with your manager, in my opinion, and a lot of times can be your lifeline, because it's a difference between a promotion and someone who says like, I'm not promoting that person.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add to that? What's advice would you give in terms of how do you leverage your manager?
I'll add to that. I think the best managers that I've had, I felt that they were truly invested in my success. Like they were truly invested in my development. One of my favorite managers, Barbara Deans. If you're watching, Barbara, hey, Barbara. But she was just great. I mean, from the very beginning, she would let me shadow her. She would let me listen to her conversations. I think as an HR professional, I was always trying to figure out what's going to be my style, what's going to be what works for Micah. And Barbara, she was tough on me at times. She had high expectations for me, but she also would teach me. And then eventually, once she knew I had it, she just let me go. She'd just say, yeah, just go ahead and just let me know what you did and just give me updates. And when it came down to it, when I finally was ready to move on to the next level, she was the person that advocated for me the most. She was the person that said, Micah's ready because I've seen her do this, this, this. She's proven blah, blah, blah. And I mean, like Brenton said, you're having a good manager can really make or break a role. I've had a bad manager in my past, and I literally left the job because I felt like they didn't trust me. There wasn't that relationship that we had where I felt like I really was going to grow in that role. So I say if you have a good manager, just be a sponge, absorb as much as you can from them, especially if they truly are invested in you. They're going to want to teach you. Good leaders like to develop people. And if you've got somebody good, definitely use that to your advantage.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else have anything to add to that? Dylan and then Micah. I mean, Makari. Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, in addition to them being an advocate for you, in my experience, it's also been helpful because they can help you to get where you want to be. So having those conversations and being vulnerable and saying, here's what I'd like the next step of my career to be. And oftentimes they either have the connection for you or they have a resource that can help you take advantage of what that next step is going to be or make the most out of your opportunity. And I also use them as a sounding board and as a place to be comfortable and say, I actually don't know the answer to this, or this thing came up on a project and I'm not really sure how to move from here. So it gives a safe space for you to be vulnerable and to say, I'm not really sure, and to use it as a learning opportunity. And those moments, I think, help you when it comes time to advocate, because now I've demonstrated I can be coachable. I can work with the team. I know how to ask questions and to take the feedback that I'm given as well and demonstrate that I can use these skills and these tools to get the job done. So they're extremely useful in a lot of ways.
Thank you, Dylan. Makari, you going to say something?
Not so much. I think Dylan explained it really well. But I think it's the same thing. I think as long as that, if you have a great manager and you acknowledge that and you're open to them about things that you want in your career, they'll help you even if it's not even at the same company. Like, they'll help you as long as you're there and showing them that you're able to do it. They'll connect you with someone that can take you where you need to go. I mean, even when I think about it, I just quit my last job and then they called me back and they were like, could you come back part-time? Because I think once they know like what you can bring to the table and how much of an asset you are, and just the fact that you're willing to grow and expand, like they'll come for you, they'll help you, and they'll move you up, no matter if it's within the same company or elsewhere.
Thank you. Anyone else want anything to add? Jasmine or Camila?
Yeah, I think everyone pretty much, I agree. And I think that something that has been working for me is, just letting your manager know like some of your interests, even if it's not within the direct job description of whatever you do on your day-to-day. I think that if you have a good manager, they will try to pivot you towards wherever you want to go, whether that's like to the right connection or whether they can teach you that skill. So I think good managers, to me, I feel like I can have a sense of just being vulnerable and just, talking about things that I should continue doing, things that I should stop doing, things that I'm doing really well. And I feel like that's naturally come, but in the past, it hasn't always been that way. So it's definitely appreciated when it does happen.
Thank you. Camila, last word.
Yeah. Okay. No pressure. I think definitely agree with what everybody is saying. Like, a good manager is going to want to help you. But one thing that was really important for me to get the best out of a good manager is to just start asking. Like, just start asking for stuff. They want to help you. Say, hey, can I go to this meeting? Like, I know I wasn't on the invite, but like, can you put me on the invite? Or can I take a first go at this? Just asking for opportunities, because they'll most likely say yes if they're a great manager.
Yes. Well, you guys, I really enjoyed this conversation and insights, and I'm hoping the audience, and I see a mix of people on in the live stream, but I really appreciate all of you. I'm going to put you into the studio while I close out. And what I'll say to you all, if you know someone who can benefit from watching this live stream, I'm going to keep a recording on my webpage. So definitely go back to that. One of the things that I am going to offer up, and this is my announcement, if those of you seen my promotion of this particular podcast, I am actually going to start and kick off a free, FREE, free early career navigating the workplace circle. And I'm doing that because I do realize that for a lot of those who are early in their career, starting in the workplace, it can be intimidating. And for me to have worked 36 years, 22, almost 23 years here at my pharmaceutical company, which, like I said, I'm retiring. I'm going to say that a whole lot. I'm retiring. And I also worked 14 years with an investment bank on Wall Street. But I do remember that feeling when I first started working in corporate America after college, how intimidating it was. And one of the things that I do want to do, and this is my give back, is really be providing a safe space for our young people to come into a circle and be able to talk about some things that they may not feel comfortable talking about. Because one, you're trying to prove yourself in your company, right? And it's not a space where I'm going to give y'all answers. So this is truly a coaching circle, right? So for my colleagues out there and my friends out there my age, if you know someone who is early in their career, just know I'm gonna start this early career circle. It really just something that just was planted in my heart to do. I will kick it off my goal is to kick it off in May. So I will start promoting it and talking about how often I'm going to meet. I'm probably going to call it early circle chat and chew, but it will be a space for someone early in their career to feel comfortable coming and just talking about the things that you're going through, in the workplace and what you might need to be coached on, right? It'll be a group coaching setting. So that's going to be my give back. So you will hear more about that. Thank you to all of you who hung in there with me. As I start to pivot myself to full-time coaching, one of the things that you're going to hear more about is things that I'm doing in the space of career leadership coaching, as well as executive coaching and early career coaching, because that is a space that I've lived for 36 years. Still will be doing life coaching, you guys. If you know someone who needs it, needs that space, needs some help in that space as well. But now I will have more time to really invest and spend my time, in that space. So you'll hear more about that soon. But for now, thank you for joining. April, y'all. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And in April and May, I want to focus on mental health for women and for men. So April is going to be a topic on women around mental and physical health. And then May, I'm going to have some men on my panel to talk about men's mental and physical health as well. All right. So until then, you guys enjoy, look out for my promotional videos and flyers around the next episode. Be safe and be blessed. Bye.